Okay, so if you guys are comfortable with answering this question, you don't have to answer this at all. But if you're comfortable with it, um, could you share in the chat on a scale of like 1 to 10 where you are on the pain scale when you have an endo flare, whether that's, you get pain daily or just during your period. Um, if 1 was the lowest and 10 was the highest, whereabouts would you say you are? Just to give me, as I go through this, it will give me an idea of how to tailor it for you guys. You don't have to share this if you're not comfortable, but if you are, just pop it in the chat box. All right, whilst some of you are typing, I'm gonna get going. So this workshop will go through evidence-based and real-life tested natural methods of reducing pain in the moment it hits. So the purpose of this workshop is that so you can create go-to, a go-to toolkit that works for you, that you can use whenever a pain flare kicks in. So you might have a plan for reducing your endo symptoms in the long term, but you know that it's going to take some time to do that. Or maybe you're like completely new to this and you're just dipping your toe in. Whatever stage you're at, some short-term natural pain relief options can really kind of help you to think straight, because you're kind of stepping outside of flight or fight, right? You're no longer in this survival emergency mode where you're in pain all the time. They obviously help you to feel better and regain some of your life back so that you can focus on actually healing with endo. All right, so we've got Philippa. I started a continuous pill, so I am with no pain at the moment, but usually a 7 on the 2 to 3 days out of menstruation. Okay, yeah, I have experienced lots of clients with about a level 7. Sarah, I used to have terrible pain when I got my period. I'd say a 20 out of 10, Jesus. But now I've changed my diet and the pain isn't terrible, but I have many more flare-ups and the pain is about 5 to 7. Today it's a 5. Okay. All right, that's really helpful. So quick disclaimer, this information is not medical advice and is not intended to take the place of seeing a licensed healthcare professional like a doctor. So obviously this masterclass hasn't been tailored to your specific body or situation, right? This is broad information. So please take this information as broad information and then consult with your doctor and your healthcare team when applying it to your own endo journey. I'm sorry, mine fluctuates a lot. Today, just 1, other days might be an 8 or 9. Okay. It can be helpful. I mean, sometimes there's no rhyme or reason, but it can also be helpful to track and just find out if there are certain points in your cycle when it's worse or better, because that can help you to plan when to have your toolkit on hand. Can anyone hear that blue bottle that's flying around me? I hope not, because it's driving me slightly insane, and I hope it's not driving you guys insane. All right, so before we dive in, I wanted to give you guys like some key considerations which will help you to get the most out of the masterclass. So as many of you know, like my work focuses on like long-term strategies for reducing pain and endo symptoms overall, so that you no longer need short-term pain relief, or you need less of it. However, flare-ups can still happen from time to time, and some of you may be at the start of your healing journey, so you're having more flare-ups. And so these protocols are designed specifically for flare-ups and painful times in your cycle, like ovulation or menstruation, which are typical, they're very typical times of pain flares for people with endometriosis. And all of these protocols are designed to provide short-term pain relief. Whilst I've handpicked some of the most effective strategies that I use in my practice, all of these are best used in conjunction with long-term strategies for addressing root causes of endo and its symptoms. So long-term strategies are things like lowering inflammation in the long term, addressing pelvic floor dysfunction, and supporting the gut and the liver. That doesn't mean that these strategies won't work without the longer term strategies, but they'll be more effective and you'll need less of them, because the idea is that with long-term strategies, endo becomes more manageable and controlled. the great news is, obviously, all of you guys have bought the course bundle. So, or those of you who are watching live have bought the course bundle. And so you have the long-term strategies available to you in the course. So I find these strategies are very helpful for kickstarting your endo healing journey. So some clients come to me in so much pain that they just can't even think about making changes to their lifestyle or nutrition. They just really need some relief first. In that case, we create a toolkit to help them get their pain flares a bit more under control, and then they're able to think more clearly and are able to operate without pain ruling their life and their decisions. And it's also, of course, it's really motivating to experience relief with these protocols. And that can help someone to have the belief that they can actually feel better and can continue to experience symptom improvement. Thank you, Sarah. That's good to know. Now, what I want to really emphasize is that all of the tools we go through today are just options. Even in the course bundle, all of those other modules, everything is just an option. You do not have to do everything. You don't have to do any of it. They're all just options. The intention of this masterclass is for you to select a few tools or even just one tool to create your own tailored endo toolkit that fits like your needs, your budget, and your lifestyle. There are many, many tools and methods out there. These are just the ones that I see work based on the research that I've done, the actual scientific research and evidence out there, and my clients' feedback. So this isn't an exhaustive list. So let's get started with natural NSAIDs and pain relief alternatives. So basically, natural replacements for things like mefenamic acid, opioids, ibuprofen. So before we go into these supplements, I do need to give a disclaimer. Consult your doctor before starting a new supplement protocol, especially if you are on medication, have another health condition, or are trying to conceive or are already pregnant. Please also let your surgeon know in advance of your surgery which supplements you're using, because many supplements are natural blood thinners, and so your surgeon may ask you to temporarily stop them. And of course, like any prescription medication or over-the-counter medication or supplement, if you notice any signs of an allergic reaction, like swelling, trouble breathing, etc., you must contact emergency services immediately and discontinue use. I've never seen anyone to have allergic reactions to these supplements, but everybody is different, so it's always best to be cautious. This is an odd one, but I want to bring it up in case it happens to you. You don't really need to do anything about it, but if you notice it, then you can make the changes. You'll come to learn in this masterclass that inflammatory chemicals like prostaglandins and histamines are essential to having a period, but too high levels cause pain. Equally, too low levels can actually slow down or stop your period. And I've noticed for me personally that if I use too many tools or supplements that lower the histamines and the prostaglandins before my real period starts, so before I see fresh red blood, then I can actually delay my period by 2 to 3 days by accident. So for example, if I'm due on and I start to get like a little bit of spotting indicating that it's about to arrive, in the past, when I had really bad endo pain, I'd see that spotting and I'd be really scared about pain kicking in. So I'd just take all of my supplements and use all of my tools straight away. But I'd lower the inflammation level so much that my period would just then not come for like 2 to 3 days. Whereas normally my typical pattern is that I will get some spotting for like 2 hours and then my period will arrive within 2 hours. I've had a very small handful of clients experience the same. So if you notice something like this, either stagger your tools or just wait until you see the fresh red blood, indicating that your period has actually begun. Just to be clear, spotting is not the start of your period. That's actually a sign that your hormones are dropping, and some like old blood from your past period will just kind of come out with the reduction in your hormones, but it's not actually the beginning of your period. The beginning of your period is when you see bright red blood and it's flowing. Of course, the issue with this is that pain relief is most effective when you take it in advance of severe pain kicking in, because it blocks the inflammatory process before it happens. So if you know you're due on, or you do see the spotting, or the pain is starting to creep in, it is typically most effective to take your supplements and the pain and use the tools at that point to avoid the pain from escalating, right? We're interrupting the pain cycle. So do that, right? Go ahead, do that. But if you notice that your period suddenly stops or it doesn't arrive as you had expected, just think, maybe, I use too much at once, or I just need to stagger them a little bit or lower the dose. Doesn't normally happen, but and no one has ever talked to me about it in my training, but I've seen it happen. So worth trying. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of pain relieving supplements. There are so many supplements which, when taken daily, can reduce your pain and flare up severity and can actually reduce endo growth rate and shrink the lesions. But I don't want to overwhelm you with lots of supplements. And this masterclass is specifically for short-term relief. So I've focused on those supplements which have been shown to reduce pain very quickly without the need for daily use. Because a lot of people struggle to take supplements daily, they forget. So if you know your period is coming up, you can just bring these tools into place and then you don't have to use them again. Or, use them when you have a pain flare, whenever you have pain. If you'd like to learn about the other supplements which have been shown to target endometriosis itself and reduce pain with daily use, if for anyone who is watching this back in the future and you aren't part of the course bundle, there are 2 podcast episodes that I've linked to in the handout and you can learn about them there. Or if you are part of the course bundle, watch the supplements module. The supplements bonus module is in all of the courses that you've bought. So just have a look through the modules and you'll see it there. Additionally, the supplements that you're about to learn about have a lot of benefits, from helping with IBS and endobelly to lowering blood sugar levels, which can actually influence pain. But as this masterclass is based on pain relief, I've kept the focus mainly on the effects on pain and the associated symptoms of flare-ups. However, if you'd like to learn more about the supplements and all of the ways in which they can support your healing journey, listen to the podcast episodes if you're not part of the course bundle, or if you're part of the course bundle, watch the supplement module as I just mentioned. Finally, I've added like a star next to the supplements and the tools that I see as being the most effective for clients and myself. So they're kind of my gold star, and I would probably start with those. All right, so I think ginger would be my number one go-to tool. For me personally, and for almost every client who's tried it, it has been incredibly helpful. And for some, it's been just the absolute game changer that has gotten them entirely off NSAIDs and opioids and to a pain-free or low pain period. It's really quite remarkable. It's also cheap, so that's an added bonus. So, in research, ginger has been shown to be just as effective as ibuprofen and mefenamic acid in reducing the pain associated with dysmenorrhea. So, dysmenorrhea, you're going to hear me talk about a lot. It just means period pain. There is primary dysmenorrhea and secondary. Primary means it's period pain without a condition causing it, without like a gynecological condition. And then secondary dysmenorrhea is pain caused by a condition like endometriosis. With primary dysmenorrhea, what they have found in the research is that it's caused by high levels of inflammation in the pelvic cavity, in the uterus, in the pelvic cavity, in the menstrual blood. So too high inflammation, basically. And ginger has been shown in multiple studies to be generally effective for reducing pain and inflammation during menstruation. So there are a lot of studies on ginger and period pain. It's also an evidence-based nausea remedy. And so for those who experience vomiting and nausea on your period, it's really helpful. I've had many clients who used to just always have constant vomiting on their period to the point where it would cause them to pass out. They no longer experience this when they start taking ginger. Additionally, it's a natural antihistamine and was shown to be just as effective as loratadine, which is an over-the-counter medication for allergies. And this is really important because we know that excess histamines are involved in the development and pain of endometriosis, and that histamines are actually released during menstruation and ovulation to aid in the shedding of the uterine lining and the ovulatory process. So when we lower histamine levels, we can actually aid with pain relief by reducing those contractions. Ginger also reduces headaches and migraines, which many of us experience with endo flare ups due to excess inflammation, histamines, and imbalanced hormones. So, those three can all cause migraines and headaches. And when they're in combination, they can cause some really, really bad headaches and migraines. So the studies on ginger tend to split the dose across the day. So similar to taking painkillers periodically. Oh my God, periodically, and they use between 750 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams in total across the day. Typically, I see 250 milligrams to 500 milligrams per dose helpful, but see what works for you. I advise building up from the lower dose so that you can ensure that it suits your body and you don't have any unwanted side effects. And of course, if it works for you at the lower dose and you save money because you don't have, you end up saving money because you don't have to save so much. So don't go in at the top end straight away because you might not need it. So, for example, you could try, say, one period, say your next period, you try 250 milligrams per dose 3 times a day, and that would give you the lower range of 750 milligrams a day. If that doesn't work for you, the next period you can increase it and so on until you reach the upper dose range. Or, day one of your period, you could try 750 milligrams a day. If you found that it was still really rough, the next day you increase it a bit. A safe upper limit of ginger powder is 2,000 milligrams a day, but it is always best to divide that dose, as large amounts in one go can actually cause ginger burn, it feels a little bit like indigestion. It's a warming, burning sensation in the chest, and it might cause diarrhea. Oh, you're welcome, Sarah. No worries. Go back to work. I know it's in the middle of the day, so I appreciate that, and you can watch this back later. And also, large amounts of ginger in one go might cause diarrhea as well. The studies used ginger on the first 3 to 4 days of the menstrual cycle. However, the studies mainly weren't done on people with endo, but with primary dysmenorrhea. So people with endo might need a bit more than that. So I don't see that there's any harm in starting the dose a few days before your period for the accumulative effects of lowering inflammation ahead of time, which will then result in a less severe period, right? You shouldn't need as much pain relief by the time it arrives because you've already been lowering inflammation in advance. You can take ginger daily as well, like all cycle long, if you want the accumulative anti-inflammatory effects of ginger. And if you struggle with daily pain, that would be a great option. Or if you get nausea or bloating, it would be a good option as well, because ginger is actually a really great tool for bloating and sickness. If you can't find or afford capsules, you can drink ginger powder as a tea. Measure out the ginger powder using a good set of scales. I will put a link to the ones that I use in the handout, and then split the dose across a few cups. You might need to weigh your cup first and then add the ginger, as sometimes if you're just trying to measure out like under a gram of ginger on a scale, it's just too light for the weight to be registered. So what I do is I put my cup on, I measure my cup, and then I add the ginger, and then I see that the cup weight increases by, say, half a gram. Then that's how much ginger I've weighed out. So you might need to do that if your scales aren't like sensitive enough. Use ginger powder, not fresh ginger, as ginger is what the studies are based on, and it's much more concentrated. So some people go, oh, I used a ginger tea and it didn't work. I'm like, did you use fresh ginger or ground? And they're like, fresh ginger, because everyone thinks fresh is better, right? But for these purposes, we do need ginger ground. I personally actually find the tea method more effective than capsules. But it's probably because of my gut complications. I have chronic SIBO, and so I do have trouble breaking down foods and supplements. So I seem to do better with a ginger in a liquid form rather than my body having to break down the capsules. I have actually included a pain relieving tea recipe in the handouts, which includes ginger and cinnamon, and you can use that, and it's in the measurements that you need. A few cautions with ginger. People with endo can sometimes have bladder sensitivity, which ginger can occasionally trigger. I have interstitial cystitis, which is a bladder pain syndrome, but I find that I can tolerate ginger during my period. The problem only occurs if I have it daily or cycle long, which is great for inflammation. It's beautiful. Ginger is a wonder spice, but it's not so great if you have an irritated bladder lining like me. But see what works for you because it might be fine for you. Ginger is also a natural blood thinner, so consult your doctor because some medications are also blood thinners, or you may already be on medication for that purpose. So you don't want to kind of double up on it. Additionally, if you are due a surgery, inform your surgeon that you're using ginger as they may ask you to come off it in advance to prevent excess bleeding. It's really unlikely to be an issue, but it's always worth discussing and being safe. If you have any side effects like ginger burn or diarrhea, then it means you're using too much in one go. So just lower your dose and split it up a bit more. Okay, now let's talk about cinnamon. So, cinnamon is another one that I see works very well with my clients, especially those with pain and heavy bleeding and like clots. Cinnamon has been shown to significantly reduce heavy bleeding and pain in people with primary dysmenorrhea. And I do see that it usually makes a really noticeable difference to my clients who have those large clots and excessive bleeding. It's kind of like it's the shining star for those clients. It's also been shown to significantly reduce nausea and vomiting during menstruation as well. Now, because of these benefits, I really like to pair it with ginger. I find ginger to be one of the most effective tools for pain relief, for in the moment pain relief, and cinnamon is really great for lightening heavy bleeding. So together, coupled with their anti-sickness benefits, they just make a great team. The studies of cinnamon for period pain vary. They've used 420 milligrams 3 times a day or 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day during the first 3 days of the participant cycle. So from day 1 of your period to day 3. Not only did the cinnamon groups experience changes to pain and blood flow on that very first period of taking the cinnamon, so it's short, it works in the moment. This is what I'm trying to aim to do with this masterclass. I'm trying to get you guys stuff that is basically going to do the same as pain relief medication. It's going to work straight away. But the benefit was that the effects increased with every cycle. So the next period with repeated use, they had even lower levels of pain and heavy bleeding. A few things to be mindful of with cinnamon. Due to the oxalate and histamine levels of cinnamon, those are just naturally occurring compounds. Cinnamon may cause bladder irritation to those with interstitial cystitis who are oxalate and histamine sensitive. You might have interstitial cystitis and not be sensitive to oxalate and histamine, so don't kind of fall down a rabbit hole with that. It's just if you notice symptoms to cinnamon. Until more recently, so recently I began having histamine related chest pain. Some of you guys know that. Up until that point, I was able to tolerate cinnamon on my period very, very well. I used it every period. If I was to take cinnamon all month long, then yes, I would get bladder pain. But just for 3 days of my period, I was pretty much fine. Now, since having more complicated heart symptoms relating to histamines this year, I am now more reactive to cinnamon from a heart perspective. It will cause me heart pain. However, this is just my experience. I have something called mast cell activation syndrome, which is a very severe form of like histamine intolerance, to put it very simply. So you guys probably won't experience that issue. It's very rare, but you should always be guided by your personal response. Generally, cinnamon is incredibly safe. When choosing your product, try to look for cinnamon that is Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia cinnamon, because cassia cinnamon contains toxic compounds that when you're using it at high doses can be harmful. It can be quite hard to find supplements for cinnamon that are Ceylon cinnamon based and at the doses that you need. So I often just buy the spice and I make the tea with it. I make this ginger and cinnamon tea, and that works very well for me. Works for me. And like I said, the handout you're going to get. You can also buy capsules, like you can buy empty capsules and fill your own capsules with cinnamon powder, like measure it out, fill them, but obviously that's going to be quite a lot of work. So tea is much easier. You might find cinnamon in the right doses, but it's very tricky. It's honestly, I've considered making my own brand because of it. Just remember, if you are going to be having a tea, it's not about just having a dash of cinnamon like you would on a cappuccino. It needs to be at the doses that are shown to be effective. So don't forget to weigh out your cinnamon, just as you do with the ginger. Okay, magnesium. I have a love affair with this stuff. Not only does magnesium play a role in the development of inflammation, sorry, magnesium deficiency plays a role in the development of inflammation, but magnesium supplementation has been shown to reduce inflammatory chemicals called prostaglandins in the menstrual blood of participants with dysmenorrhea and reduce their pain and symptoms. So, prostaglandins are supplements in the body that are used in various functions, including causing the contractions that result in the uterus lining shedding during menstruation. So, they work alongside histamine. Now, high levels of prostaglandins during your period also cause period diarrhea. So, if you've wondered why you suddenly have loose stools during your period, it's from too high levels of prostaglandins. So, we need to get that inflammation down. The inflammatory types of prostaglandins are known as prostaglandin E2, and they've actually been shown to be heavily involved in the development of endometriosis and are found in excess levels in people with endo and dysmenorrhea. So, pain, swelling, heat, scarring, and redness are some of those key symptoms of inflammation. So, when we reduce inflammation, we're reducing pain and all of that heat and that scar tissue formation. So, targeting inflammation is really a key way to reduce our flare-ups. Now, because magnesium is also a muscle relaxant, it can actually help to ease cramping, further helping to calm uterine contractions. Finally, if used regularly throughout your cycle, it has actually been shown to reduce PMS, support the clearance of old and excess estrogen, and boost progesterone production, helping to create balanced hormones. And when hormones are in balance, they can make endo symptoms a lot worse. So we want to keep those guys in check. So a magnesium bath with 500 grams to 600 grams of Epsom salt will actually reverse magnesium deficiency. And magnesium deficiency is really, really common, especially during menstruation and in menstruating people. And the bath will also relax muscle cramping, tension, pain, and anxiety. To gain the full benefits and to really absorb the magnesium, they've studied this, you do need to soak for at least 20 minutes. Having an Epsom salt rich bath at the quantities that I've outlined, so 500 grams to 600 grams, is about 2 cups, 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week in the lead up to your period can be really helpful for reducing magnesium deficiency and therefore can result in a better period with lower pain levels because you've kind of reduced the inflammation in advance. Keeping this habit up all month long can really help to alleviate chronic daily pain. So I think a couple of you said that your pain fluctuates and it can be daily. So this could be really good for you. And it's going to help you to keep your magnesium levels topped up. So it's going to help with all of the other things like hormones. Of course, you could just use this approach on the first few days of your period or when you're having, pain flares. But I do tend to see that the best results come from being used more regularly or in advance of your period starting. Many of my clients use this bath method and they just experience like incredible results to the point that sometimes I'm just like, I can't believe this. It kind of shocks me every time. I've had multiple clients go from high pain periods to no pain or really low pain with just one cycle of using magnesium baths. I also personally use this approach as long as I have a bath available to me, and I swear by it. It doesn't just make a difference to my pain levels, but how I feel mentally, emotionally, physically, how I sleep. It's just wonderful. And it has all of these effects because the magnesium plays a crucial role in hormonal health and balance, but also in like hundreds of different functions in your body. If you don't have a bath, try getting a small blow-up paddling pool or using a foot bath. I'm traveling at the moment, and most of the time I don't have a bath, so I bought a blow-up paddling pool and it's worked just as well. Although a bit weird, but it works just as well. If you don't have time for baths, you can use supplements or magnesium spray. This is the one that I use. Just so you guys know, I have no affiliate links in the entirety of this masterclass. None of the brands know that I'm doing this. I think all but one brand knows who I am. So this isn't, none of this is affiliate, based. I'm not getting anything from this. These are just the tools that I use. So this is what I use. And magnesium oil spray can be very helpful for instantly soothing cramps and pain when you spray it directly on the pelvic area, or like, the source of pain. You could also try a lotion or balm, and I think Better You do have lotions and balms, and other brands have lotions and balms as well. I just don't really like the feeling of them. Um, I use magnesium spray when my period starts to keep cramping at a minimum, or if I start to feel any pain kicking in. The effects occur literally within minutes, if not instantly. So I feel personally, I feel it within seconds. So it's great for those really intense peaks because you don't have to wait for any drugs to kick in or the ginger to kick in. You just you can begin taking that edge off with the spray. Usually that I find that if you're having a pain flare, you do need to top up with the spray every few hours, as and when the pain kicks in. So my go-to is to use this spray with BU patches, which I'm going to talk about later on. So when my pain starts, or I feel pain kicking in, I will stick on a patch and then I spray the magnesium around it. And I do that because this is an oil. And so if I was going to put the oil on first, then the BU sticky patch just wouldn't stick down. So I do that. I do it that way. And together, I find those really calm down the most severe cramps, and that provides some extra time to allow ginger to kick in. And then for added comfort, you could actually add heat on top, and we'll get to heat therapy soon. Now, in terms of magnesium supplements, there are actually quite a number of magnesium supplements with different benefits. So if you'd like to learn more about those, I would refer to the podcast episodes or the supplement module, because I talk about the different types of magnesium in there. But for the purpose of like menstrual pain or cramping, one study used 300 milligrams of magnesium stearate taken daily from day 15 of the menstrual cycle, and then taken to the last day of pain during the next period. So you would start on day 15. When your period arrives, say your period stops being painful on day 4, you would stop. That would be your last day, and then you would start again on day 15. Okay, so there are very few risks with magnesium. The BU patches recommend not applying heat over it. So I have spoken to them and they say it can just cause extra sensitivity. I'm going to get to BU patches and the caveats shortly. And I've spoken to them and they said, we don't advise it, but if it works for you and it doesn't cause irritation, yes, you can, but it's just not something that they typically advise because it can cause some skin sensitivity, but it works fine for me. What I would say is you need to put down like a wrap or a towel and not have scalding hot. It can't be scalding hot. So it's not like a boiling hot water bottle, if that makes sense. You can certainly talk to BU. They sponsor the podcast. So I asked them about this when I was creating the podcast. So magnesium oil can be itchy and irritating to the skin. That's why I use a sensitive one, because I mean, it's still a little bit itchy, but it's not anywhere near as bad as the normal one. So the way that you can reduce that itching, and the itching actually comes from the magnesium being absorbed into your skin. And so you will feel it more. The more deficient you are, the more you'll feel it being drawn into the skin. You should start to get used to it. But what you can do is spray on your skin when your skin is wet from the shower or bath. That will help it absorb quicker, so it will be less irritating, and apply body cream on top afterwards. And both of those methods, for me and for clients, tend to reduce the irritation. If you're spraying onto dry skin for quick pain relief, say it's the middle of the day, you don't have time for a shower, you don't have time to wet your skin, just use the sensitive skin spray and just maybe rub in some body cream on top to calm down any irritation you might experience. It's not like it doesn't, it doesn't burn the skin, it doesn't cause any rawness, it's not damaging the skin, it's just a bit itchy, it's annoying. Magnesium deficiency is super common, and so taking too much magnesium is just really unlikely. However, consult your doctor about using the supplements and the sprays together. The spray is designed to deliver the amount of magnesium that you need, but we don't typically absorb magnesium very well in the gut or through the skin. It's not, we struggle with magnesium. So I actually like the approach of using it on the skin and taking it orally. So I'm covering both bases, but check with your practitioner and see what's going to work for you. Finally, if magnesium citrate or if you're taking magnesium citrate or oxide, diarrhea is a sign that you've taken too much. I typically only use these types of magnesium for clients with constipation because they're not absorbed, and instead they work their way through the digestive tract and they help to draw water into the colon and create a bowel movement. So really, it's a treatment for constipation, and then because of that, you're not really going to experience the same pain relieving benefits because we're not absorbing that type of magnesium. It's not getting absorbed, it's just staying in the intestines. Okay, so now let's talk about quercetin. Quercetin is a little bit of an odd one, but I wanted to bring it up here. It's one of my favorite supplements for those with endo, bladder pain, and histamine related issues like allergies, which, very, very common with the endo community. Now, we don't have the same types of studies on quercetin as we do with the others. There are no studies showing that it can work for short-term pain relief that I know of anyway. But I have found it to be very effective for my tough cases, especially for those where histamines are a major problem for people and they've been unresponsive to the other supplements that I've listed today, or they haven't found as much relief as I would have thought they would. So when we bring in quercetin with these people, we often see a really big shift. So quercetin is an anti-inflammatory antioxidant found in certain fruits and vegetables like apples. One of the ways it lowers inflammation is by blocking the same inflammatory pathways that NSAIDs do. So that's why it makes a potential alternative to those commonly used pain relieving drugs, right? So if you guys rely on NSAIDs quite heavily, you might want to consider quercetin. Whilst there aren't studies on humans yet, like I said, on at least on pain relief for your period or for the uterus, animal studies and in vitro studies, and in vitro means tests that are performed on cells in the lab, they've shown that quercetin can actually inhibit contractions of the uterus by lowering prostaglandin levels. So given that quercetin blocks the same pathways as NSAIDs and can actually lower uterine contractions, I mean, it's certainly plausible that it's going to work as a short-term pain relief, right? Even though we haven't tested it. Other studies, again, not yet in humans, but on animals, have actually shown that quercetin can inhibit endogrowth and shrink the size of lesions. It's also a really effective antihistamine. It's used in cases of mast cell activation syndrome, which I mentioned earlier, and is a histamine condition that is found in higher levels in our community. Because histamines are involved in endo development, one of the ways that quercetin could be targeting endometriosis and shrinking the size of lesions and endogrowth is by lowering histamine levels. I mean, it also lowers estrogen levels in the endometriosis lesions. That's one of the other ways as well. Finally, quercetin has been shown to reduce pelvic pain in IC patients. And as we know, up to 90% of us with endo also have interstitial cystitis. And I will say for my bladder pain, quercetin has been revolutionary. It's absolutely changed the game. It's been amazing. So because we don't have studies on humans with period pain, we can't determine the exact dose that might be effective. But generally, most research on quercetin is based on 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams a day. And the research on IC was based on 500 milligrams being taken twice a day. So I typically find this range, when you take it all cycle long, works very well for reducing menstrual pain or any pelvic pain related to endo. However, for some of my clients with MCAS, we do go higher. We go up to 2,000 milligrams a day. And for that, I'm using Dr. Leonard Weinstock's approach for MCAS. So I did some training with him for MCAS, and that's what we use for those people. You may find that you do well starting at 500 milligrams all cycle long and then increasing to 1,000 milligrams just before and during your period to give you that kind of extra boost. I take 1,000 milligrams all cycle long because, you know, I have interstitial cystitis, so I want that 1,000 milligrams. And then I up it to 2,000 milligrams just before and during my period because I have MCAS and my histamine tends to get out of control. So I really want to lower it. So because we don't have any studies showing its use for in the moment pain relief, I typically use it with clients all cycle long. So that's what I mean. This one's slightly different, but you could just try it during a pain flare or during menstruation at these doses and see if it helps you. Because like I said, the research that we do have is promising, right? It reduces uterine contractions, it works like NSAIDs, so we could certainly try it. As I mentioned earlier, what's really interesting is that my clients with MCAS or histamine intolerance, they tend to show a really big improvement with their pain when they use quercetin. And these clients often don't respond well to other supplements like curcumin, or just not as well. But when we bring in very strong doses of quercetin, suddenly we see dramatic improvements, suggesting that a lot of their pain is histamine driven. And because we know that both histamines and prostaglandins are involved in pain and the development of endo, as well as in menstruation and ovulation in everyone, whether you have endo or not, it would make sense that those of us with higher histamine problems and higher levels of histamines would respond better to lowering histamines, whereas others might just have higher levels of prostaglandins. And so, you know, ginger works well for them or magnesium works well for them. With endo, we know that we all have higher levels of histamines and prostaglandins in the pelvic cavity. That's how it works. But some of us may have like one or the other is a bit higher, right? So typically for those of us with MCAS, it's probably going to be the histamine that is higher. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water. Okay, so there aren't many cautions with quercetin. The biggest one is that it can slow down something called the COMT gene. So the COMT gene is involved in clearing estrogen and neurotransmitters and hormones like adrenaline and dopamine. Some people with endo already have COMT gene variation, so we have a higher chance of having a variation with that. And that means we have trouble clearing these. So quercetin can actually make that problem worse, creating a buildup of estrogen and these neurotransmitters in the body. Now, I spoke to Dr. Jessica Drummond about this, and she said to me, look, this isn't really an issue unless you notice symptoms or you test positive for the COMT gene variation if you decide to get that tested. But, you know, getting that tested is like £400 privately, and I don't think the NHS do it. So you might not want to go down that route. In terms of symptoms to look out for, when you have too much adrenaline or dopamine, you're looking for mood changes like anger, low moods, irritability, anxiety. And then signs for high levels of estrogen, you're looking at signs of PMS, estrogen dominance, mood swings. So if you didn't have those before, you start taking high doses of quercetin and things don't feel quite right, then it might be that it's slowing down your COMT gene. Now, again, this doesn't mean you shouldn't take it. You might just want to trial it and see how you feel, because it might be that you can tolerate 500 milligrams of quercetin, but you just can't tolerate 1,000 milligrams. So it's not that you have to completely eradicate it. It's just, what do you tolerate? Now, finally, like ginger, quercetin is a natural blood thinner. So of course, consult your surgeon and your doctor.